In a world where potions unlock paths to godhood, a man jolts awake in a strange room, confused, breathless, and clutching a weapon. He doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know whose body he's in. And when someone calls him Klein, he realizes something is very wrong. It all began with a nightmare, and now, reality feels even worse. In the world of the Beyonders, humans gain extraordinary abilities by taking potions that set them on one of the 22 paths to godhood. Each path begins at sequence 9, and the lower the sequence number, the stronger the powers. Those who reach the highest ranks of a path can become godlike beings in what's known as the path to divinity. On September 9, 1349, in the 5th epoch, we witness a blood-soaked church. But it all begins on June 28th of the same year, when a man dreams he's falling from a plane, and sticky tentacles try to invade his mind. His body explodes mid-air, and the tentacles grow larger, stretching toward his very soul. That's when he jolts awake drenched in sweat, in a filthy, blood-stained room with a gun lying right next to his hand. The pain is so intense he wonders if he's had a brain hemorrhage, or died from exhaustion. As he struggles to make sense of it, a hand touches his shoulder and calls him Klein. But he doesn't know who Klein is, doesn't even recognize the voice or the body he's in. He stumbles toward a mirror, and doesn't recognize his own face. That's when it hits him, he must have transmigrated. Meanwhile, the police break into a house and find 2 dead men on the floor, Welch and Naya, both history graduates from Koi University. One officer assumes they took their own lives, but something darker may be at play. A black prophecy fulfilled, or a Beyonder sacrificed, awakening a malevolent force. The captain finds a photograph and asks who the man in it is. A subordinate explains that it's Klein Morty, a classmate of the deceased. Klein's parents are dead, and he lives with his siblings. He's a citizen of Tinjin, in the Awa County of the Lone Kingdom, located on the northern continent. Also a history graduate, Klein is fluent in ancient Fasak and Hermes. In a personal journal entry dated May 29th, Klein noted that Welch had come to visit, claiming he'd found an ancient notebook. It wasn't until June 20th that they managed to decipher the first page and realized it dated back to the 4th epoch. It was written by someone from the Antigonus family. Over the following days, Klein studied references to the Dark Empire, the Tudor Empire, and the Hornisus mountain range. But curiously, there was no entry for June 27th. Allegedly, the notebook turned its own page and highlighted a phrase in Hermes, "All will die, including me." Investigators can't understand why Klein would write such a thing. That same day, after reading that ominous line, Klein heard a woman's voice calling his name from behind a door. He quickly hid the notebook before she entered, but didn't have time to put away the gun on the table. He concealed it behind his back just in time. The girl was Melissa Morty Klein's younger sister and a student at Backlund University. When she turned her back for a second, he managed to toss the revolver into a drawer. But she heard the noise and asked what it was. Klein told her his pocket watch broke again. Without missing a beat, Melissa fixed the watch and handed it back like he was an idiot, then left the room. Alone again, Klein cleaned the blood off a lamp and noticed his wound was already healing, perhaps one of the perks of transmigration. From what he could gather, Klein had either shot himself or someone staged it to look that way. His memories were a blur, full of gaps, but he was certain that old notebook was the key to everything. As for the transmigration, well, in this guy's luck, it felt almost normal. Speaking of luck, he suddenly remembered performing the ritual of fortune enhancement. Lost in thought, he was startled when Melissa barged back in and hit her head on the upper bunk. She handed him a plate of sliced food and asked him to buy bread, lamb, and peas. She was heading to school. Since her brother was doing his best to find work, she promised to cook a special meal for him. Once she left, however, he silently mourned the possibility that he might never see her again. Klein picked up the gun and got ready to perform the fortune ritual again, hoping to transmigrate back, hopefully in time for dinner. At the market, he bought rye bread from Mrs. Smyron and ran into an acquaintance on the street. They exchanged polite words about graduation, jobs, and the dream of owning a home. This is the city of Tinjin, in the Kingdom of Lone. On Iron Cross Street, Klein noticed the moon looked just the same in this parallel world. Near the church in the town square, some men were playing the landlord's game, something that also existed in his original universe. About a century ago, Emperor Rosel Gustav of Intis invented that game, along with tarot reading and the steamship. He also started the Spring Festival. Honestly, Rosel might have been a transmigrator himself. Caught in that train of thought, Klein was suddenly approached by a clown who handed him a flyer for a circus performance at 7 p.m. Suspecting something strange, he quickly left the area. Not long after, he arrived at a tent where a hooded woman was gazing into a crystal ball. she invited him to seek guidance for his future. Outside, a man named Jenkins walked past, then suddenly turned around after spotting someone else wearing a hat. Inside the tent, Klein remained on edge, constantly feeling like someone was watching him. The fortune teller laid tarot cards on the table and invited him to try his luck on the house. He decided to learn something about his past, present, and future. She asked him to shuffle the cards again and think of his questions silently. Klein nodded he already had. Without delay, the woman drew 3 cards to represent his past, present, and future. Klein picked the card for the present first. She flipped it over and revealed the Fool. He knew that card well, it was number 0 in the tarot deck. It symbolized every kind of new beginning. In the midst of it all, another woman storms into the tent, full of rage. She accuses the seer of stealing her place, calling her nothing more than a beast tamer pretending to read the future. Right behind her, a man also enters the tent. But when Klein sees who it is, he manages to slip out unnoticed. Back at home, holding papers about the celestial dignitary, Klein hopes to return to his world through luck, or perhaps transmigration. To attempt it, he places the 4 essential foods he bought in each corner of the room. Standing in the center, he makes a hand gesture and begins chanting the celestial dignitary over and over, until the sheets of paper start to swirl and rise into the air. Outside, a carriage from the Awa police passes by on the street. As the wind dies down, Klein, to his surprise, thinks nothing happened. But then, a sharp, splitting headache hits him like a hammer. His body convulses, and a strange reaction spreads through his skin like fire. The writing on the papers begins to fade into the air until a red stone shatters, dragging Klein into another world entirely. There, red and blue chains of energy surge with power and wrap around the man. A woman from the Hall family performs some kind of awakening ritual in front of a blood-colored mirror. And far away, in the middle of a raging sea, a man holds a jar filled with glowing blue stones that multiply inside it. Then, the red energy materializes into the woman, who appears disoriented as she takes in her surroundings. Meanwhile, just in front of her, the blue energy takes form as the man from the furious sea. Floating above them both is Klein, now somehow in a position of authority. The woman looks up at him and asks where she is, calling him my lord, and that's when Klein begins to realize he might have summoned them. She wonders aloud if this man is the master of the divine realm. But Klein didn't even know it was a divine realm. He hadn't seen any shrine nearby. Just then, as if summoned by her words, a sanctuary rises from the ground, crumbling ruins reforming piece by piece, until the structure is whole again. Klein is startled to see how law is enforced here through manifestation and decree, which makes him wonder if he could use the gray fog to hack the system. Acting on impulse, he raises his hand, and when a reaction ripples through the space, he knows he was right. The summoned man asks where he is, and who Klein really is. That question makes Klein think deeply. Is he Zhu Mingrui or Klein? Whoever he may be, he sits on the throne and declares, "Call me the Fool." The man wants to know what the Fool is planning. Klein replies, "Just an experiment," offering no further explanation. The woman asks if the experiment is over and whether they can leave. The Fool tells them he can send them home if they make an official request. Meanwhile, as if Klein could split himself in two, another version of him walks among the summoned pair. He notices the woman speaks with the innocent voice of a young girl, while the man's tone is calm and cautious. Sitting at the table, the woman smiles, clearly enjoying the whole experience. It's exactly the kind of supernatural mystery she had always dreamed of. Excited, she asks what she needs to do to become a Beyonder. But Klein has never heard that word before and finds himself speechless. Not wanting to look ignorant, he suggests she ask the gentleman beside her. Studying them closely, Klein guesses the young lady might be a noble from Lone, while the summoned man wonders how the Fool managed to bring him here, since he lives across the vast Sonia Sea many leagues away. At the Fool's request, the man explains that to become a Beyonder, she must join the Church of the Evernight Goddess, the Lord of Storms, or another of the major churches. While most people never become Beyonders, they do exist and constantly battle against the darkness. The woman says she doesn't want to lose her freedom, so the man advises her to seek help from the royal family or the nobility. But since she insists on another option, he remembers he has two Sequence 9 potions, one called Sailor and the other Listener. As he describes the potion's effects, Klein realizes that each one grants supernatural abilities tied to different attributes. And considering that sequence refers to skill level, perhaps the Grey Fog and his transmigration are part of some Beyonder power too. At that moment, the young lady turns to the Fool and explains she's made an agreement with the gentleman, and would like Klein to act as a witness to the pact. He agrees. She then excitedly asks if he could arrange more meetings like this. Klein seems unsure what she means, so the man from the Sonia Sea explains. The fool has powers beyond imagination, but he and the young lady could handle simpler matters the master doesn't wish to deal with. Klein reflects on this. Holding frequent meetings might reveal his secrets, but staying in touch with this mysterious realm might also increase his chances of returning home. He would have to face the fear of the unknown. With that, the fool decrees that meetings will be held every Monday at 3 p.m., as long as both guests remain discreet. The woman asks if they should come up with aliases, since they can't use their real names. The fool likes the idea. Suddenly, an image of someone knocking on a door flashes through Klein's mind, followed by a painful vision, his own dead body. As for the young woman, since the fool emerged from a tarot card, Audrey Hall decides her codename will be Justice. The man chooses to call himself the Hanged Man. With every word spoken, Klein feels worse. The figures before him begin to distort insanely, impossibly. Unable to take it any longer, he ends the meeting on the spot. As soon as he does, the summoned ones vanish with their energy chains, and the fool dissolves along with his throne, like dust scattered by the wind. Moments later, the Hanged Man finds himself back on his ship, his jar of blue stones now shattered. Audrey sees her mirror broken, and Klein he returns to the place he currently calls home. Some time later, he wakes up to the sound of police knocking on his door. Quickly, he hides the blood-stained notebook and his gun. Peeking through the keyhole, he spots an impatient inspector on the other side holding a book. Taking a second to fix his hair, he finally opens the door. That's when Klein discovers that the man at his door is the same one who was following him in the square. His name is Leonard Mitchell, a member of the Awa police. Though he insists he wasn't threatening Klein, he was protecting him. Without waiting for permission, Leonard steps inside, and another officer named Dunn Smith tries to calm the boy by saying it's just a routine investigation. Klein asks whether Naya and Welch really took their own lives. According to the detective, yes, it appears so. Still, Klein suspects they were possessed, but he keeps that to himself. Leonard finds the blood-soaked notebook and reads the phrase, "Everyone will die, including me." He asks what it means. Klein stays calm, pretends to think for a few seconds, then says he doesn't remember. Dunn goes on to say there's evidence Klein visited Mr. McGovern's house on 27th Street. Klein didn't even know that himself. He explains that the only way he can guess what he's done lately is by reading his own journal, even if the inspectors don't believe him. Ignoring that, Dunn adds that McGovern's revolver is missing, and it will likely be found here. Without hesitation, Klein admits it's in the stove. He tells them that last night, in the middle of the night, he woke up sitting at the table, as if he had failed to pull the trigger. From that moment on, his memory started to fade. Dunn believes Klein is telling the truth, but it doesn't matter. He'll still have to go through a psychic evaluation to recover his lost memories. A medium will dig into his past experiences on Earth. Even so, Leonard says the boy is lucky to be alive. Usually, people involved in these kinds of events don't make it out at all. After the inspection, Klein follows the officers outside, on his way to the psychic test. Nervous they might discover he's a transmigrator. Distracted, his attention is suddenly caught by a man yelling at a child who's been stealing food from him every single day. The kid darts past the officers but is caught by Dunn, who hands him back to the angry baker. The boy squirms and kicks a pole from a nearby tent, and amid the chaos, Klein Morty sees his chance and bolts. Without looking back, he sprints through the streets of Tingen and hides in a narrow alleyway. Out of breath, he stops to catch it. Just his luck, a window above him swings open, and someone dumps a bucket of water out. But something strange happens. The water stops midair, completely frozen. Klein realizes that time and space have been suspended. When objects on the ground start to float, he's sure a Beyonder is nearby. Around him, windows burst open like a hurricane is tearing through the city. In a panic, Klein runs, trying to escape the chaos, but even the ground rises like a wall, chasing after him. By sheer luck, he dodges obstacles that could have killed him, until he finds a carriage offering taxi service. He asks to be taken to the port, and the carriage sets off immediately. It feels like no one is chasing him anymore. Maybe all of that madness stayed behind in the alleyways, maybe it was just a dream. Feeling safer, Klein tells the driver to pull over, but the man ignores him and changes course, heading instead to Welch's house. Then, the driver's beret falls off. It's Inspector Dunn Smith. In the next scene, Klein wakes up from the dream back at home. The door opens, and standing at the end of the hallway is a man in a long coat, silent. He walks forward and introduces himself as Dunn Smith, the Night Watcher. Klein suspects this man was the one manipulating his dream. The Night Watcher says that by night, their power is far greater than most would believe and proves it by ripping apart everything around them, lifting Klein into the air using the wreckage of his own home. A woman with glowing eyes suddenly appears behind Klein. She tells him to stay calm, she'll be quick and gentle. Dunn adds that there's no need to worry since she prefers corpses over men anyway. Then, a series of fragmented scenes flicker by, hinting at the passage of time. Eventually, Klein Morty finds himself looking at a happy image of his parents. The woman, still somewhat hidden, says superficial memories can be erased, but deep within the ocean of the mind, echoes may still remain. Judging by what he's seeing, Klein assumes he's inside his own mind, and maybe just maybe this mysterious woman can't see his secrets. In his head, he thinks all of this might be because of the gray fog. Suddenly, the woman grabs him and demands to know where he hid the Antigonus family notebook. Klein says he doesn't know. She then asks what he was doing on June 27th, the day Nia died. Klein doesn't answer. In that moment, McGovern's revolver materializes in his hand. He raises it toward the woman's ghostly face, but then changes his mind and aims it at his own head. Sometime later, he wakes up in a different place, wondering if he passed the test. Up ahead, the mysterious woman tells Dunn that Klein survived shooting himself, but there are no clues about the missing memories, just as Welch and Nia's souls have vanished. According to Dolly Simone of the Church of the Evernight Goddess, the force behind all this is fear itself, and she's never encountered anything so complex. She warns Dunn Smith to be careful. Dunn explains that the Antigonus notebook has disappeared, which means Klein is still in danger, but they can't protect him. So, the Night Watcher offers Klein a choice to join them and become a Beyonder. The next day, following the police officer's instructions, Klein Morty heads to the Hound pub to look for someone named Wright. If he joins the Night Watchers, Klein fears they might discover his secret, but at the same time, it could be the perfect way to blend in. Besides, it might be a good opportunity to learn more about mysticism. Inside the pub, men were betting money on a dog savagely tearing rats apart inside a cage. Even outside the cage, some patrons were fighting each other, and none of them seemed the least bit welcoming. When Klein approached the counter, even the bartender took a jab at him, saying they didn't serve milk there. Thinking this might be Mr. Wright, Klein corrected him and said he was looking for mercenaries. A drunk sitting nearby burst out laughing, saying the kid must be living in the past. The bartender, none too gently, stepped closer and asked who had sent him. Klein replied that it was Dunn Smith. At that, Wright glanced around, then told the boy to follow him through a door in the back. There, without realizing it, Klein was taken into a hidden elevator. After a short ride, he arrived in a strangely clean and refined room with Blackthorn Security Company written on the wall. Behind the counter sat a receptionist named Roseanne Adelaide, who was fast asleep. Embarrassed, Klein woke her up, startling her. She blurted out that the Soaring, the new steam train, was launching today, but quickly realized the young man wasn't interested in that. When she heard his name, she remembered the captain had mentioned someone new would be arriving. A hidden passage opened behind the counter, and Leonard Mitchell appeared on the other side. He didn't say a word to Klein. As she guided him through the passage, Roseanne mentioned that there had been more Beyonder cases in the past couple of days. While heading down the stairs, the two ran into the beautiful Royally Riadine, a member of the Night Watchers known as the Sleepless One. Farther down, Klein came across the strange office of Fry, the corpse collector, a distant man, but according to Roseanne, a good guy. He even taught her how to draw. In the hallway, they passed Kenley White, a member who had only joined 6 months ago and was always nervous during missions. After showing Klein around, Roseanne dropped him off near the captain's office. She could have gone in with him, but for some reason, despite the man being kind like a father to her, she always felt uneasy around him. Finally, Klein arrived at a massive gate known as the Cheney's Gate. Beside it, the door to the operations room opened, and inside was Dunn Smith. The inspector handed Klein a document from the Awa Police Department's Special Operations Division for him to sign. He then explained that Blackthorn Security was just one of the Night Watcher's many covers. They also operated under the Church of the Evernight Goddess, and from now on, Klein would be part of the group investigating supernatural incidents. However, the captain warned him, as a Night Watcher, he ran the risk of losing control. As he said that, he handed the boy a candle and led him to another room. Beyond the door was a place that looked more like a cathedral or mausoleum, filled with tombstones. Each one bore the name of a Night Watcher who had been sacrificed pioneers of Tinjin, revered to this day, all of whom had died after losing control. Klein placed his lit candle in front of one of the tombstones. Then, Dunn asked him if he knew the creation myth. The young man answered that the Creator, awakened from chaos, brought forth the first ray of light and then created all existence. One of his eyes became the sun, the other the crimson moon. His body became the earth and stars. His hair turned into the phoenix, and his ears into demonic wolves. As Dunn explained, everything came from the same origin. Humans can craft potions using mystical ingredients to gain powers and follow certain paths. Klein recalled how the Hanged Man had mentioned something about the 22 paths the day before. Dunn went on to say that the Church of the Evernight Goddess had sequenced 9 potions for 4 paths. The Complete Sleepless Path, the Corpse Collector, meant for self-defense, the Mystery Prior, and the Seer, for mysticism. However, none of them were strong offensively. Dunn mentioned another option, the Path of the Diviner, though they only had the Sequence 9 version. Either way, Klein wasn't expected to decide now. First, he needed to talk to Neil in the alchemy room to make the best choice. As Klein walked away, Captain Dunn stayed behind, reflecting that the Night Watchers were guardians, but also a bunch of miserable souls fighting threats and their own madness. Wandering the hallways, Morty thought to himself, no matter which potion he chose, what he really needed was knowledge about mysticism. In his view, the Sleepless and the Corpse Collector were off the table. That left him torn between the Mystery Prior and the Seer. When he arrived at the alchemy room, he knocked 3 times and stepped in. No one seemed to be there until an explosion went off. Neil came stumbling out of the smoke, coughing like crazy. Before anything else, the old man said he'd been expecting Klein. But before choosing a sequence, there was something he needed help with, organizing some documents. Without complaining, Klein helped sort a few books on the shelves. While they worked, the old man mentioned that the boy had a degree in history and knew ancient Phases and Hermes. Klein corrected him, saying he wasn't exactly fluent. Neil replied that it was always better to start with something you're already good at. That way, once you got the hang of it, you'd be able to decipher books that vanished after Emperor Rosel's death. Most of those journals had been lost, and recovering just these 3 had taken great effort. It said that the unique symbols Rosel invented held mysterious powers, though for over 150 years, no one had uncovered their true meanings. Still, Neil claimed to have deciphered a few of them, and was confident they represented numbers. In other words, it was a diary. Fascinated, Klein took one of the documents and realized it was written in simplified Chinese by Emperor Rosel Gustav himself. It read, November 18th. Truly fascinating. I found a poor man caught in a storm and lost in the darkness. Lucky fellow. He met me, the protagonist of this era. January 1st, 1184. A magnificent New Year's party. Lady Florna was absolutely dazzling. Klein was taken aback to discover that the Emperor was far more emotional than he'd imagined. But right after that, he got hit with a heavy line from another part of the journal. I've repeated it so many times. The secret of potions isn't about mastering them, but internalizing them. It's not about gaining powers, but becoming. The names of the potions aren't just symbolic, they're a concrete key. The key to internalization. Reading through the journal, Morty began to wonder if he might actually discover a way back home. As he kept reading, he came across another passage from the Emperor. I made a hasty choice. Looking back, I should have chosen the Apprentice, the Seer, or the Marauder. Those are the best options. Lost in thought, Morty wondered what Gustav meant by that until old Neil interrupted him, asking what was going on. Klein explained that he was trying to decipher and translate the diary, which made the seasoned alchemist chuckle. He thought the boy was far too young for such a complicated task. Letting the matter go, Neil asked which potion the boy wanted to take. Klein decided to trust his predecessor and chose the Seer. Neil reminded him that once he made this decision, there would be no turning back, but Klein was sure he had to follow his heart. Laughing, the old man admitted he hadn't expected the boy to choose the path of the Seer. It was the kind of path only people with a strong personality would choose, just like he had back in the day. Cheerful, Klein said he'd love to learn more about mysticism. That's when the alchemist recalled a quote from Emperor Rosel, "Knowledge is power." And now that Klein had made his choice, it was time to begin. Without delay, the alchemist started mixing. 100 milliliters of pure water, 13 drops of nightshade extract, 7 mint leaves, 3 drops of hemlock extract, 9 grams of powdered dragon herb, and finally, the most crucial ingredients, 10 milliliters of crystallized squid blood, 50 grams of stellar water crystal. With all the elements combined, the Seer's potion was complete. Honestly, Klein was terrified of being poisoned after drinking that concoction. But Neil warned him the more he worried, the less he'd absorb. So, Klein stared at the liquid, took a few seconds to gather courage, and drank it. Immediately, the same words began repeating in his mind. Hornicis, Phlegria, Hornicis, Phlegria. As the psychedelic rush took over, the alchemist explained that the effect had begun. Some powers were leaking out. That was normal. Whatever happened, Morty had to stay focused and picture a very ordinary object from this world. Concentrating, Klein imagined a top hat. Then, Neil instructed him to adjust his thoughts and visualize something that didn't exist in this world. Still focused, Klein imagined something that cracked the ground beneath his feet. The crack widened until it became a full-blown explosion that could be heard by Leonard on the far side of the base. Panicking, Neil yelled at the kid to control his spirituality and imagine something foreign to this world, but Klein Morty was completely tripping, lost inside his private universe, where a massive object rose beneath him and carried him high above the city of Tingen. Down in the streets, some people felt something strange happening, but none of them could see anything at all. Neil kept urging Klein to recall how he had imagined the object. That's when the boy managed to mentally summon a freaking rocket, which soon vanished into the air and sent him crashing down. Klein plummeted, surrounded by all kinds of bizarre objects that didn't belong to this world. In the end, he came face to face with a gigantic astronaut, who released an absurd amount of magical fluid from inside his helmet. At the same time, bottles across the alchemy room popped open and began spewing that same viscous substance. Alarmed, Neil ordered Klein to take hold of his spirituality rather than letting it spill out. With each second, the boy sweated more, and his thoughts grew more surreal and unhinged. Suddenly, his eyes shot open, completely enveloped in darkness. And just like that, the process was complete. Klein Morty was now a seer. Proud, old Neil knew this kid was something special. Realizing Klein was seeing things differently, he told him this was called spiritual vision and that now he could perceive people's health by reading their aura. Startled, Klein noticed eyes floating behind the alchemist. Neil explained that it was just a magical representation from a ritual, nothing dangerous. Looking to the side, the seer saw the silhouette of a human vanish into thin air. A sharp headache followed. Neil warned him that overusing spiritual vision could exhaust his spirituality to the point of causing hallucinations. According to the alchemist, Leonard, after becoming a Beyonder and taking his potion, had once tripped and fallen down a flight of stairs over something silly. So, if Klein wanted to control his mind better, he had to tap twice between his eyebrows to switch the spiritual vision on or off. After trying it out, Klein heard that he could also channel his spirituality into divine arts, like dowsing rods and all sorts of ritual magic. Wrapping up the lesson, Neil told the boy to check the demon hunting bullets, along with a few other items, before leaving. Also, he'd need to hand in some receipts so Dunn could reimburse him. After receiving the seer's special abilities, Klein returned to the captain. Speaking of which, Dunn warned him that being special in the world of Beyonders came with real danger. Early on, he might start seeing or hearing things he wasn't supposed to, and if that happened, he needed to stay out of it. Finally, Dunn told him that before officially becoming a night watcher, he'd be working as a clerk and would earn £3 a week as an advance 12 per month. Overjoyed, the newly employed Klein remembered that his brother Benson only made £2 to £3 per week. He had just gone from poverty straight into the middle class. Leaving the Hound pub and following the captain's instructions, Klein grabbed a cane. As his daily task, he was to walk around the Welsh family's home to remind himself where the notebook might be. On the very first day of this task, partway through the walk, a carriage pulled up beside him. A man called out from inside and invited him to get in. Under heavy rain, Morty receives a mission one that involves little Elliot, the only son of Viceroy, a tobacco merchant, who was kidnapped earlier that morning. Honestly, Klein thought his job was just to deal with Beyonders, but Leonard explains that they're operating under the cover of a security company, and this is an old client. Either way, the rookie has nothing to worry about. Seers are great at finding people. With that, the Night Falcon hands over Elliot's clothes and tells the young man to get to work. Klein takes out his dowsing rods and activates his spirit vision. Instantly, the world changes shapes and colors, shifting into something otherworldly. The seer's cane glows with reddish lightning that shoots toward the sky and connects to the viscous substance that clings to the boy's mind. In a flash, Klein sees a vision, Elliot letting go of an adult's hand and wandering toward a dark alley. As the cane falls to the ground, Klein orders the carriage to move straight ahead, then left, and finally, a right turn. At a certain stop, the seer steps out. The cane hits the ground again, its tip pointing to a house on Forreston Street. Klein knows, without a doubt, that's where the boy is being held. When Morty and Leonard enter the mansion, the cane pulls them upstairs and points to a door on the second floor. Peering through, the seer spots two kidnappers holding the child hostage. With this intel, Leonard promises to wrap it up in under a minute. Klein, meanwhile, deactivates his spirit vision as a headache begins to build. The very next moment, the door explodes open. One of the thugs grabs a shotgun and fires, but Leonard dodges the bullet like it's nothing. From there, the shooter gets tossed around like a ragdoll. The second thug makes the mistake of trying to go hand to hand. Leonard humors him, even putting one arm behind his back and fighting defensively, until he gets bored. Then he lands a brutal combo, a punch to the gut, a shot to the nose, and a final knee to the chin. Just like that, it's done. The job's over, and all Leonard wants now is to clock out and go home. Klein unties the child and asks who the kidnappers are. Leonard says they're gamblers from the Hound pub. But before they can leave, Klein watches as a spiritual feather floats down from the ceiling, vanishing just as it touches the thugs, triggering a strange reaction in their bodies. That's when Leonard realizes this wasn't just a simple kidnapping. Things are finally getting interesting. Suddenly, the criminals rise again. Their bodies twist and merge into a bizarre, grotesque creature that lunges at the night falcon with terrifying ferocity. Leonard keeps his cool, dodging each attack with ease. But it's clear this thing is far more dangerous than two angry middle-aged men. Still, Leonard uses his teleportation skills to stay safe and wait for the perfect opening. When it comes, he strikes, but the creature vanishes. Worried, Klein pulls his revolver and reactivates spirit vision. Shadows on the ceiling tell him the monster could strike at any moment, and he's holding a child. The cane points in the creature's direction, but it's fast, too fast, and comes in for a sneak attack. Klein reacts instantly, firing with his eyes shut. The beast shrieks and halts its attack, unfurling wings in an attempt to flee. But it's yanked back, caught by Leonard Mitchell. Dragging the monster into a world filled with roses, Mitchell begins to chant, almost like reciting a poem. The threat of fear, crimson hope. One truth remains, this life is brief. One thing is real, the rest all lies. When the flowers bloom, they will leave this life behind. With that, Leonard explains to Klein that the Midnight Poet's power will lull the creature into a deep sleep. In the midst of it all, the seer has a vision of himself walking through a door. It's a sign. Klein has been here before, but he chooses not to tell his partner. Later, Elliot is reunited with his father. As they embrace, Leonard inspects the beast and compliments Klein's aim, though Klein knows he was aiming somewhere else entirely. Frustrated, the Night Falcon warns the seer to stay back to avoid contamination. According to him, Bako somehow got his hands on this potion, and wild Beyonders like that always lose control. They're the worst to deal with. Truth be told, Klein was lucky to survive such an encounter. Before leaving, Leonard gives a casual handshake and confesses something strange. There's something about the boy that draws him in. Awkward, Klein mutters a quick, "What the hell, man?" and takes off. But as soon as he steps outside, Leonard uses his own shadow to check and concludes the boy isn't special after all. After finishing the mission, Klein heads home with a big smile, eager to tell his sister he found a job. But when he opens the door to his apartment, there's a new flight of stairs. It feels like he's entered a labyrinth. At the end of the corridor, strange noises echo behind a door. He opens it and finds the Antigonus family notebook. Scrawled on the page, "Everyone will die, including me." Below it, the Fool card manifests growing, expanding until it covers the entire floor beneath his feet. In that instant, Klein wakes up same table as always and realizes that the house across from the kidnapping site holds a clue to the Antigonus notebook. In the next scene, a man walks through the morning light, searching for 2 Daffodil Street. When he arrives, the mailbox reads Morty. Just as he reaches for the bell, Klein and Melissa open the door, joyfully welcoming their brother Benson back home. They're all moving in together, even though they're still paying rent at Ironcross Street since the stingy landlord refuses to return the deposit. Benson says he'll deal with the guy. Everyone laughs when he adds, "Even a baboon is smarter than that man." Next, the family gathers for lunch. Even though it's Klein's first time cooking, Melissa absolutely loved the taste. Benson hands his brother a box with a nice outfit inside. After all, Klein just got a job and should feel good about himself. Klein puts on the outfit and shows it off to his siblings, receiving their warm affection and the feeling that he truly belongs to a dream family. With a smile, the older brother raises a toast to Klein's new job. Melissa joins in, celebrating the new home they now live in. And finally, Klein makes sure to add that their future is only going to get better. In a dark alleyway, a man sells the Antigonus family notebook to a hooded figure. Later, Leonard watches as this same man dies on a throne, shadows violently tearing themselves from his body. Spotting the tattoo of the secret order on the back of the dead man's neck, Leonard puts the pieces together. Since this was the man who put the Antigonus notebook on the market, it makes sense that the secret order is after Klein. They want the notebook too. Now, the Night Falcon's mission is clear: find the notebook before they do. That's when the captain receives word that Klein has a lead on its whereabouts. Speaking of Klein, a little while later, he enters a room in a house to find a corpse, writhing with worms. To mask the stench, he inhales a substance offered by an ally, who remarks that he's been in this very place before to deliver the notebook. Leonard, who's also present, comments that it's no surprise Bako lost control, considering how close he was to the notebook. Since Bako is a Beyonder who kidnapped a child, it's almost too much of a coincidence that all of this happened just across the street. Meanwhile, Dunn is informed that the notebook still hasn't been found, and Ray Bieber, the victim's son, is missing. Immediately, Klein is tasked with finding the missing boy, but after using the cane in the process, the object turns against the seer himself and nearly impales him. Holding the cane in midair and narrowly avoiding disaster, Dunn realizes that some powerful force has interrupted the divination. He calls an end to the day's work and promises to notify the sacred cathedral so they can try other investigative methods. Next, at Channy's, the captain compliments the rookie's coat he's standing beside him for this mission. The captain hands the young man a topaz pendulum, which amplifies spiritual communication and divination, very useful for their objective today. According to Dunn, the cathedral has authorized the use of a Class 2 sealed artifact to help locate Bieber, and it's being escorted to Tingen as they speak. These are special objects among the Beyonders. Some possess miraculous magic, others devastating power. That's why they must be tightly controlled behind the Channy's gates. For the record, Class 2 means dangerous. A moment later, 3 more members arrive to join the team. The first 2 are from Backlund: Eor Hansen, a Sequence 7 Nightmare, and Borja, a Sequence 8 Gravedigger. Finally, Dolly Simone, a Sequence 7 medium someone Klein has had the pleasure of meeting before. Eor points out that this operation is dangerous, and that bringing along a seer with no combat power seems questionable. Dunn doesn't say anything, but he notices that Eor is carrying Artifact 2049, the one that was actually approved by the Sacred Cathedral, not the one he'd expected. Once the group is assembled elsewhere, the captain points out that even though the Antigonus notebook is involved, they weighed the risk of activating 2049. On that point, Eor Hansen admits the risk is high. But if Bieber really is an Antigonus descendant, the only way to find him is with this artifact, which his own family created, responsible solely for using the artifact. Eor instructs everyone to follow his lead if they value their lives. With that, Eor moves his arm in a pendulum motion, and everyone present mimics the gesture. Over and over, he pulls away the cloth covering the artifact, and the case thrashes to the floor as if it has a life of its own, slowly opening to reveal a minstrel doll. Klein can't imagine how something so adorable could be so dangerous until the doll reveals its true, demonic face, paralyzing the nearest human and starting to turn him into a puppet. The doll nearly finishes the job by stringing up the young man, but Leonard intervenes with a well-timed slap on his colleague's back. Dolly remarks that the little doll seems to have taken a liking to the seer, while Dunn suspects it's because Klein has come into contact with the notebook. After all, 2049 reacts to the slightest trace of the Antigonus family. Eor explains that the doll can transform people within a 5-meter radius into puppets, though some outside force can still break its control. At that moment, Leonard tosses Bieber's coat on the floor, instantly enraging the doll. For Eor, that's proof enough that Ray Bieber is an Antigonus descendant, and so, the search must begin now. And so, somewhat ridiculously, the group takes to the streets, still swinging one arm like a pendulum. Klein Morty admits to himself that he's never felt so embarrassed in his life. But fortunately, Leonard lets him stop the motion as he climbs into the carriage. The group sets off in 2 vehicles. Elsewhere, in a warehouse near the docks, Ray Bieber is participating in a ritual. A voice proclaims that the Antigonus bloodline will be revived and return in all its glory. In the middle of the ritual, Bieber's body absorbs the notebook and transforms into a monster, hiding behind a pillar. A man in clown makeup laments that it's already too late, the notebook's been consumed. But with his keen hearing, he notices carriages approaching, and for a moment, he dares to hope. Displaying his order tattoo, he plans a surprise for the guests. Soon after, the 2 carriages pull up to the warehouse entrance. Following orders, Klein uses the topaz pendulum to sense danger, and the artifact detects an enormous threat. The warehouse doors swing open, releasing a red smoke that sends the horses fleeing, carriages and all. The Night Falcon members train their weapons on the smoke as a monstrous giant emerges, raging and ready to attack. The Falcons open fire, slowing their enemy's charge. Dunn shows Klein a sleep incantation and tells the seer to back off and stay safe. The Falcons then recite the midnight poem, imprisoning the giant in a world where they have the upper hand, and with every second, victory seems within reach. But in a sudden twist, the monster responds by spewing a dark substance from its mouth. Dolly realizes the poetry isn't working. With a violent punch to the ground, Ray Bieber breaks free from the astral prison. Dunn realizes this isn't just a Beyonder losing control, this is a dead soul. With that in mind, he climbs onto the giant's back and strikes with a surge of electricity. Dolly joins the assault, unleashing the death stare. While the captain quickly realizes this isn't just any dead soul, it's already under the control of the notebook, which limits their attacks. Dolly claims to have found the creature's weak spot, so the others just need to hold it off for 3 seconds. With that said, Dunn Smith casts the dream net, and Leonard, opting for a more direct approach, closes in to distract their opponent. But just as Dunn manages to bind the giant with his energy cords, Klein senses the book inside Bieber pulsing so intensely it causes real, physical pain, and as if that weren't enough, an explosion tears through the area, releasing tentacles from within the notebook, one of them violently stabbing straight through Captain Dunn's torso. The leader isn't the only one hit. Leonard is also gravely wounded. The other 2 try to protect the artifact, but one tentacle manages to knock the briefcase to the ground. Seeing this, Ire orders Borgia to secure the item while he charges at the giant monster. Confident, he plunges his magic-imbued sword into the enemy, but it has no effect at all. In return, Bieber deals a devastating blow to the Falcon, knocking him flat and forcing Borgia to rush to his aid. Still alive, Dunn grabs the tentacle skewering his body, and with veins bulging across his face like rivers, he recites a poem, refusing to back down. Klein, for his part, finds the noise of battle overwhelming, but prefers it to the whispers of the gray mist. Using the sleep items given by the captain, he activates both and hurls them at Ray Bieber. Now, with their foe vulnerable, Dolly moves in and unleashes his underworld mother ability, triggering a violent blast that sweeps up everything nearby. When the dust settles, Eeyore dashes to help his fallen comrade, who's lying unconscious. As she's treated with medication, the group's seer hears someone repeating the words Hornisus, Flagria, over and over. Following the voice, the boy finds the Antigonus family notebook beneath some rubble, but his discovery draws the clown-faced man to the scene. Wearing a malicious grin, the clown lunges at the new notebook holder in a surprise attack. Dunn fires at the attacker, only to discover it was nothing but an illusion. While he keeps shooting, searching for the real enemy, he begins reciting the words for another spell. Suddenly, Klein recognizes the clown. It's the circus performer who handed him a flyer just the other day. Dunn hits another illusion and wonders if this opponent is a sequence 7 Beyonder or lower. Eeyore orders Borgia to stay clear of 2049 and then dives into close combat with the enemy. Leonard does the same, but the clown has plenty of tricks up his sleeve, escaping danger whenever the tide turns against him. His uncanny agility lets him dodge bullets with ease, making Klein suspect he can anticipate the Falcon's every move. So, the seer decides to break the clown's rhythm by firing in the middle of his evasive maneuvers. Sure enough, the shot lands in the clown's abdomen, wounding him at last. The clown tries to flee, but Leonard won't have it, chasing him down with his midnight poem. However, the clown counters in time with a magic whip that keeps him out of the astral prison, then charges straight at Klein to finish the boy off. Quick as a flash, Eeyore slashes at the enemy with his sword, but once again, it turns out to be just another illusion. Suddenly, with a snap of his fingers, the real clown manages to open the artifact's case. Instantly, time freezes, and the minstrel's cords wrap around every night Falcon still on the battlefield. Desperate to break free, Klein thinks of the gray mist as the external force he needs. He recites the correct words and manages to escape to the magical cathedral, where he once summoned his subordinates. Not wanting to return to the battle empty-handed, and knowing he has to act fast, Morty uses a divination board and a topaz pendulum to check if it's safe to go back to the real world. The pendulum writes out a phrase on the board, confirming it's safe to return. So the boy does, finding that, even though he's still wrapped in the minstrel's cords, he can move again. But before he can act, a voice offers to set Klein and his companions free if he hands over the notebook. To prove his goodwill, the clown even throws in a bonus. As a former seer, he'll answer one question for Morty, like, say, what's the sequence 8 equivalent of a seer? Klein wonders if this guy really was a seer, since he seems unaware that Klein can already move. At the same time, he can't help but worry that the gray mist may have interfered with his divination. Just then, the clown tells him not to worry, the marionette only knocked everyone unconscious. Still, he warns the kid to hand over the notebook before things get worse. In any case, he tells Klein to pay close attention, because he's about to reveal the sequence 8 for seers. The clown extends his cane, nearly pointing it at Klein Morty, but the boy surprises him by snatching the cane away and firing back. The clown dodges the bullets, still brimming with confidence, until he notices, with shock, that the marionette's cords are now wrapped around his wrist. Morty managed to draw him within 5 meters of the artifact's case. With the target unable to move, Klein finishes him off. After taking down his foe, Klein discovers a tattoo of the secret order on the clown. To his shock and horror, the clown rises once more, repeating Hornesis over and over only to collapse for good moments later, never to rise again. With the death of their main enemy, the Falcons drape a cloth over the magical artifact and tend to the wounded. While Klein studies the notebook in his hands, Leonard arrives and admits he came fully intending to save the seer, but then realized Morty had forced the clown into 2049's control zone. To Leonard, it's clear some people are simply capable of things ordinary folks aren't. People like the two of them. As his partner walks away, Klein can't help but poke fun at Leonard's obvious narcissism. Back at headquarters, the captain personally locks the artifact away in the Chinese gate. Standing beside the rookie seer, he acknowledges the boys' curiosity about the notebook, but says they'll have to wait for confirmation from the sacred cathedral. Setting that aside, the captain praises the newly recruited member of the Night Watch for his excellent work. Klein not only prevented disaster by stopping a Beyonder gone wild, but also foiled the secret order's plot. With achievements like that, there's no doubt Klein Morty is in line for a promotion soon. After leaving the Chinese gate, Dunn is asked why Bieber hadn't left Tingen earlier, considering how dangerous absorbing the notebook was. He replies that people under the influence of ancient, evil powers tend to make poor decisions. Further along, Klein sees the clown's body in the corpse collector's room and lowers his head. The captain urges him not to dwell on it. After all, killing that maniac saved countless lives. Shifting gears, Morty reveals that he's figured out what Sequence 8 is on the seer's path. It's the clown. Later, out on the street, the team from the last mission gathers. Dunn announces that Dolly will be sent back to Backlund once she's recovered. Ayer Hansen remarks that Klein's actions today were nothing short of incredible, and asks how a Sequence 9 managed to kill a Sequence 7 from the secret order. The boy admits he doesn't really know. He figures it must have been a blessing from the goddess. The clown predicted everything, except that Klein wasn't actually under control. Leonard suggests it might have been because Klein had the notebook, so the clown offered to awaken him in exchange. That's when Klein seized the opportunity to let the clown fall under control and then finished him off. Sheepishly, Klein adds that it wasn't just one shot, and tells Ayer his marksmanship still leaves a lot to be desired, so it really must have been a blessing from the goddess. Ayer confesses that Morty is the most talented seer he's ever met, and before stepping into the carriage, adds that the kid's future is bright. Hearing the praise, Klein suddenly feels a strange sensation in his body. Guessing the potion must be assimilating, he figures something must have acted as a catalyst and made the process easier. Knowing the next potion is for the clown, Klein considers moving ahead without delay. As for those Hornesis whispers, maybe some history professor would know more, so he makes plans to visit the university and ask around. Later, at Koi University, a professor named Isaac Eggers is asked about it. Klein explains that, before the incident, he'd studied an old Antigonus family notebook mentioning the nation of eternal night atop the Hornesis Mountains. Even so, although he's heard the names before, the professor believes they might just be words with the same root, meaning he can't offer much help for now. Klein asks Isaac to write if anything comes to mind, and heads for the door. Before the young man leaves, the professor thanks him for the gift and, considering that Morty works for a security company that tracks down ancient relics, points out that a love for investigating history is admirable, but it's easy to end up wandering into forbidden places, lost in the darkness. Once Morty sets foot in those places, misfortune will follow, so Isaac urges him to be extremely careful. After Klein leaves, Isaac sits reflecting on Antigonus and the nation of night. Meanwhile, his shadow splits into tendrils that conjure a massive skeleton. Check out these videos appearing on your screen and subscribe so you don't miss the next part.